Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amina Hussein. I'm the Director of Programs and Content at WISE. It is my privilege to welcome 4 special speakers today. We are here to have an enriching conversation on AI, social networks, and the role of music in education. As you all know, music is a language that we all love and understand. So who better to speak to us about music and its role in education than a music star himself, Steven Van Zandt. Steven was a founding member of the Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band and is also recognized as one of the world's foremost authorities on rock and roll. He's also the founder of the Rock and Roll Foundation, and he is here today to give us a very interesting presentation with David Roth, who runs the Rock and Roll Foundation with Steven. So please join me in welcoming both Steven and David to stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amina. And good morning, WISE delegates and very esteemed colleagues. It is quite an honor to be here around some of the very finest educators on earth, to talk about a goal we all share and hold so very dear. And that essentially is about how the best way is to connect with, to engage, to inspire, and to retain our students' focus while sparking their imaginations. All importantly, throughout all of that, our goal is to foster those human connections that transcend borders, transcend generations, transcend cultures, and transcend languages. We, of course, each of us here today, we approach these goals a little bit differently. And our goal, Stevie and I today, is to talk about our approach via music. Because, as the poet Hans Christian Andersen said so beautifully, when words fail, music speaks. A recent study of Spotify listeners in the New York Times proves what we all know instinctively and through our personal experience, that at a very young age, most people form a musical taste that they retain for the rest of their lives. But for this young people, it's more than a preference. It's an identity. It's a sonic, it's a visual aesthetic that tells the world who they are and how they feel and what they think about and what they're all alike. Music begins to define us before most any other of the forces outside of our immediate family even have a chance to get inside of our heads. So just for a moment, here at WISE, in such an extraordinary ecosystem, would each of you just for a moment think back to that time when music meant everything to you? Think about that time right now, sitting in your bedroom or in your house or outside, when it meant listening to music and tuning out the rest of the world. That's when music mattered the most to you. Now remember that, and then think about what happens if during that period a teacher began a class period. A teacher began a class by teaching about your music and where it came from and how it was related to the subject. How it was related to the subject being studied, but also how it was related to everything else. How might you have responded? What would you have felt? What would you have felt about the teacher? What would you have felt about the class? What would you have felt about the subject? Music. Music has that unique ability to get inside of our souls and inside of our hearts in much the same way we all want learning to inside of our children, inside of our students. So why not connect a love of music with a love of learning? I bet everyone here today, regardless of where you are from, regardless of your personal experience, you have a song running through your head, and you probably do all day. And you probably have for most of your life. That's the soundtrack to each of our lives. We each have that soundtrack to our lives that changes as our emotions change and help us deal and make sense of our world. That soundtrack is proof of music's inherent ability to captivate and transform. Captivate and transform. Two words again we want to make sure are associated with learning as well as with music. So, from a policy perspective, teaching this way is no departure from classic pedagogy. We're not asking history teachers to sing or play the guitar. We're not asking chemistry teachers to learn how to tap dance, but we're giving them the tools to engage students by using the culture and science of music within their disciplines to accomplish their own classroom goals, your classroom goals, through content that excites students and captivates their imaginations. Again, two words, excites students, captivates their imaginations. In the United States, we use primarily rock and roll and hip hop as genres, but the beauty of this concept is that the model is not content or culture or language or country specific. We can meet kids where their interests are. We can meet kids wherever they are, from Doha to Detroit. And one of the best parts, this is an innovation that does not require additional funding or grant writing or solicitation. It's free, it's available, it's online, it's available right now for those who are interested in utilizing this unique curriculum that is proven to be effective in the United States and even in Australia and in Europe. But we hope through WISE, through this conversation, to be able to expand the network of educators and policymakers who wish to implement this sort of a curriculum and even work with new partners to create locally relevant musical education content, like we discussed yesterday at an extraordinary visit to the Qatar Music Academy. From lessons that trace back Yara or Fairuz, trace back what it is that defined their music, to Oliver Mutukudzi in Zimbabwe. It doesn't matter where a student is or where it is they're learning. This is relevant to how they can become captivated and engaged. What we're advocating, very simply, it's truly global, it's uniquely relevant, but most importantly, it's truly human. Stevie?
I thought my generation's generation gap would forever be the biggest in history. The 60s was a decade in turmoil. Young people protesting the Vietnam War, protesting for civil rights, protesting for women's rights, gay rights. We looked different than our parents. Boys wore long hair for the first time. We didn't wear ties and jackets to school. We tried to wear blue jeans. They were shocked by our music. We questioned our government for the first time in history. In short, we were the first generation to not grow up to be our parents. We were at war with them, we embarrassed them, but beyond our physical and philosophical differences, we still had a few things in common. Yes, we were the first TV generation, but we pretty much learned from books the same way they did. We learned our parents' history as well as our own. The way we were taught to think was basically the same way they had been taught. Linear, step by step, new bits of information building on the previous bits of information, knowledge being acquired slowly, deliberately, painstakingly. Our methodology for learning was the same as our parents. In other words, our brains were the same. And that is why I believe we are now facing an even bigger generation gap than ours was. I've always believed the 60s were so profoundly important that history one day would be divided into pre-60s and post-60s. But now, 50 years later, we are witnessing changes that are just as profound, but far more subtle. As I said, we were at war with our parents. Now kids live with their parents until they're 35. So it's more subtle. But I sincerely believe that the technological revolution has not only forever changed the way kids learn, but I believe it is changing their physical brains in ways we may never be able to measure. But I'm convinced it's happening. They're faster than us, smarter than us, and have absolutely no patience whatsoever. We cannot continue to teach kids the same way we were taught, which was basically learn this now and someday you'll use it. This is no longer going to work. We're going to have to engage kids and keep them engaged and start teaching in the present tense. We need to give kids something they can use now, because for them, it's all about now. They need a reason to not look at their device and find any answer they need in 30 seconds. We believe we have found that reason. We believe the common ground between students and teachers is music. And isn't it ironic? It was music that caused our generation gap. And this time, it's going to be music that brings us all back together.
This may sound like one big social studies class to all of the teachers who are here today. But we believe deeply at our core that the arts and music belong in every class, in every discipline. In fact, the arts provide the imagination required to achieve creative solutions, even in, and perhaps especially in, the sciences and mathematics. Our advocacy in the U.S. to support the transition of STEM education into STEAM, something many of you here are even far advanced than we are, is the perfect example. Obviously, the added A in STEAM is for the arts, and it cannot nor should ever be left out. Some still ask, even today, how does the arts fit into a science curriculum? Well, think about it. How do we hear sound? How is what we're doing right now, how does my voice get translated into your headphones? Why do we hear bass notes across a much longer distance than we do high notes, treble notes? What is music other than mathematics and science? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics teach you how to make something. But the arts endow you with the ability to decide what to make. The arts endow you with the ability to decide why you should make it, for whom it is meant, and why it matters. An arts teacher, a music and arts teacher from Washington, D.C., said this so beautifully to me. Music is a common human denominator. Music is emotion. Music is an unexplainable manifestation of what it is to be uniquely human. Let me repeat that. Music is a manifestation of that which it is to be uniquely human. Birds sing. But do they weep, or do they cry, or do they cheer, or do they laugh as they walk along to the sound of it? I love that this teacher said that music is uniquely human, hence a reply, a cogent and potent reply to the rhetorical query posed us here at WISE, what it means to be human. And let's not forget, one of the United States' greatest exports is culture. Music, film, dance, these are more than just fun things. They are industries. And the skills of STEAM are required to bring these industries to fruition. Combined with sciences, the arts also bring balance. Intellectual balance, social balance, and gender balance. And while STEM classes, as many of the teachers here know, have historically been dominated by boys, the addition of arts generally makes STEAM classes almost gender neutral. So balance, inspiration, engagement, Engagement in the arts and education, music and education and the arts, inextricably combined. Looking at all of you today, you know this. In your hearts, teachers the world over strive each day to connect with their students, to make learning relevant and reflective of the real world. Our thesis, which has been proved conclusively, is that through the integration of the arts in classrooms, all of our classrooms, teachers and students, and by extension, families and communities become more interconnected, more empathetic to each other, and less estranged, less separate from the very essence of what education is once distilled. And what is education once distilled? It's about human connections to each other via content that ignites creativity and ignites intellect. Music and arts define each of us here today and each of us around this world. Let's let them now help define the way we teach. The sub-theme of WISE is what it means to be human. And I submit that music is a powerful indicator and potent rejuvenator of our shared humanity. Stevie.
To continue what David just said, when we think of the arts, we tend to think of aesthetics, the beauty, the emotional content, the fun. It is fun. But we sometimes forget about the usefulness of the arts. And I want to just re-emphasize some of the things David just said, because I think it's important, and I think we sometimes forget about it. To give you 3 quick examples of the usefulness of arts, I want to talk about the intellectual, the practical, and the spiritual. The intellectual is the most subtle. A lot of kids are just not comfortable with the precision required for math and science. Exposure to the arts early on in a classroom setting can completely change how that student regards the education environment. First of all, there are no wrong answers in the arts. Everybody is right, whatever they think. Second, the arts are all about imagination, emotions, instinct, the tools that every kid already has. By using these tools in a satisfying way, the whole machine is stimulated. And by the way, who cares what part of the brain that stimulation comes from? Left, right, who cares? As long as it comes. Suddenly, the math and science aren't so intimidating anymore. Suddenly, the dots are getting connected. These days, in the rapidly changing world we live in, the obsession with testing is more and more ridiculous. When are we going to learn that testing is not learning? It's far more important to teach kids how to think than what to think. The second usefulness of the arts is the practical. We don't talk about it often enough, but as David just mentioned, the arts are big business. It's probably the biggest product exported by my country. Music, TV, film, books. And the truth is, within those arts, you don't even have to be an artist to make a great living. There are dozens of jobs within the arts, keeping thousands employed, from carpenters to computer programmers, truck drivers to drone experts. You know, I spent 6 months a year in Norway filming Lillehammer, which was the country's first international success and first evidence that they had a whole lot of talent in that country waiting to be exported. They are a country, you may not know this, but they are a country that's dependent on oil. And, like some neighborhoods around here, for instance. The Norwegian cultural minister would encourage me to give speeches about embracing the arts as an alternative business model because they live with the panic of running out of oil. What I told them was, you don't have to worry about running out of oil, but you better start worrying about the day oil becomes irrelevant because of new, clean, alternative, sustainable energy sources. There's something to think about. The arts are big business, and it's nice and clean. I close with the third usefulness of the arts, the spiritual. Spiritual power of the arts transcends language, cultural differences, politics, religion, race. Art comes from the soul, where our living spirit resides, the spirit that all living things have in common. That's why we can use it to communicate person to person directly worldwide. We don't need to speak to each other through our governments. Governments get hung up on issues that are irrelevant to us. We can speak directly soul to soul. That is how we're going to achieve our most sacred and profound goals in life, including the big goal. As far as I can figure, we are here for one reason, one obvious goal: to unify the planet. Everything else seems like a waste of our precious time. One world, no war, poison-free, a smart world, an educated world full of love and harmony. That's our destination, isn't it? But remember this: the energy, the strength, the spiritual wisdom that makes the journey to that destination possible, that's in the arts. Thank you very much.
Well, it's amazing to glean an understanding of how music can serve as an entry point for relearning in so many different subjects. So I want to open the floor to our audience to ask Stephen and David a few questions, and we'll dedicate 5 minutes for that before we move on to our next segment. So if you have any questions for Stephen and David, do let us know. Okay. I see one over here.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Isabella, and I work at a school in Madrid. It's a British and international school, and we value music a lot. We do different cross-curricular activities for our girls from infants to their last year of secondary. So I was wondering, our leadership in the school values music. Our teachers value music. Our girls value music. How do we teach the parents and the family to value music as well, and to give them a bit of sustainable, data or fundament of the intellectual value, the academic value of what music gives their daughters? Because it's a girls' school, so they're daughters.
You're getting pushback? You're getting pushback from the parents?
No, but we want to make sure they understand what their kids are doing and that they value it as well.
Well, I mean,
I think
it's its own reward.
I know, and I think that's one of the best questions that you could ask us. Much of what we talked about, the ability of arts and music, when utilized within a curriculum, to enhance everything else, to enhance mathematic ability, to enhance scientific understanding, to enhance the ability to understand history. Parents will resonate with something within a curriculum that helps their children, especially their young girls, become more able to navigate the complexities of life. So to the extent that I think we all are, Stevie and I are data-driven, right? We want to see data. We want to see the studies.
Exactly.
We have that on our website. We can certainly share with you very clear, specific, data-driven answers to why it matters. And I love the fact that you asked that question, because parents, at the end of the day, most important.
I mean, very simply put, you say we do it because it makes the kid comfortable, right? Yeah. You know, it's something that they understand. It's something they bring to us. You know, the whole point of this new generation, I think, in being successful in engaging them, is not dragging them to our old ways, but going to them, right? Going to where they are already and using what they are doing or what they're comfortable with, and then, you know, emphasizing and encouraging that, and then we'll use that energy to take them where we want to go, you know? So just, you know, it makes them comfortable, and that's enough. That's enough right now. You know, let's you know, especially when it comes to math and science, you know, a lot of little girls, you know, they're like, do I really need this, right? You know, and after they get comfortable with music, you know, they find the math and science is a lot easier to accept. You know, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Over here.
We'll
Is there
do
a
one
microphone?
last question.
Is the microphone there? We get the microphone to her.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Lovisa, and I work for a small NGO in Sweden that works to promote tolerance and diversity. And we're initiating a project right now that is called Forbidden Music. And it's about showing how music has an essential part when it comes to creating democracy. And in some parts of the world, some music are actually forbidden because of what the words are saying. So my question to you is to take with me home, in what way is music essential for democracy?
Well, one must begin by believing in freedom of speech, I suppose, which we're fortunate enough to have in our Constitution and our country, you know. But music is the most fundamental communication that we have, you know. It transcends language, frankly, you know. It goes beyond words. And that's nothing but a good thing if you believe in democracy, you know, and honesty and truth, and that's what the arts are really all about. So, you know, you're going to occasionally have problems with it's historical. We can go back in history, you know, to the slaves of my country, you know, speaking in languages that they understood, you know, so that, you know, the slave owners wouldn't know what they were singing about. So, you know, that whole, you know, there's a whole history of protest, if you will, as well as communication when it comes to music. So it's built in. It's built in. And, you know, and it's always going to be opposed by dictators and fascists and white supremacists and the rest, you know, nationalists and all those who oppose freedom and democracy and equality. That's just built into the system, you know.
Your question obviously could take an hour of conversation, but as you know, as on the Acropolis, right? On the Acropolis, whenever a new decree was written into marble and placed upon the Acropolis, there was similarly some art and music to go with it, to not only explain it to people, but to make it relevant. And within many of the Platonic dialogues, and even in Pericles' own writing, Pericles writes about the importance of the arts, and something Stevie says all the time. During that period of time, arts and democracy and education were absolutely interlinked and inextricable. There was no separation. So you can go back even farther than the struggles around our world with various forms of government. Go to the very start of the Demos and the Polis, to the top of the Acropolis where democracy began. Art and music and education were critical to the actual exercise of democracy. It's a great question.
Okay, so with this question, we end our interesting time with both David and Stephen. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to use this moment. Thank you. Big round of applause. Thank you so much. If you want to hear more from Stephen, I do recommend you to attend tomorrow's closing plenary, where Stephen is going to be joining YCEO and a couple of other people during the closing plenary. So we'll take a moment to transition the stage before we start our next segment.